Good evening, everyone. Am I audible to you? Josna, am I audible?
Yes, madam.
Okay, thank you. So, what we have discussed till now. So, we just have a look at the points what we have discussed till now. Till now, we have discussed what are the aims of higher education, what is higher education, what are the aims of higher education, and how higher education is related to society, economics, development of the country, and what are the reforms education has made, and how higher education was in the British or colonial period, what is its historical perspective, how it grows throughout the history, and what about the development higher education has made, and what are the different constitutional provisions regarding Indian higher education, what are the central and state mechanisms that are helping the higher education sector, and what are the functions of University Grant Commission, the constitutional amendments regarding higher education, planning and funding in higher education, and higher education through different 5-year plans that already we have discussed till now. Then now it's time we have already acquainted with what is the history and how higher education developed, what is its relation to society, why higher education is important for our society, and from the historical perspective, why higher education is always given importance, that we have already discussed. And today we will discuss about the higher education and problems of contemporary Indian society. What are the components and identities that comprise Indian society, and what are the nature and history of conflicts in India, and what is the role of universities and higher education institutions to reduce conflict and contribute towards a good society or towards a vibrant society, you can say. What is the role of higher education? That things we will discuss, and after that we will discuss what is the role of WTO, World Trade Organization, and what is its role in higher education. So these things we are going to discuss today. Okay. Okay. Let me share my PPT. Just say whether it is visible or not. Is it visible to you?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you. Then, according to you, if you are thinking about the problems of our society, then what are the problems according to you? Is there any idea? Okay. Then we will discuss what are the components and identities of Indian society, nature and history of conflicts in India, then the role of universities and higher education to reduce conflict, then the World Trade Organization and higher education. So this is all about, just a minute. Yes. Then, what is the nature and history of conflicts in India? Role of universities in higher education to reduce conflict, the World Trade Organization, and higher education. So, what are the salient features of Indian society? Before going to the salient features of Indian society, we will speak about something about the identities in India. What is identity and why we are saying that identities in India? So, what is identity? If we look into the identity first, then we will say the if you know the psychologist Erikson, socio-psychologist Erik Erikson, he was a psychologist, and in fact, uh, he has given the theory regarding this identity, but here also we will take it from that point of view also. So uh, the term identity until the 20th century, and it in the term identity was taken from the two things, the psychodynamic and sociological. It is psychodynamic meaning and sociological meaning, and the Erik Erikson saw identity is a process located in the core of the individual and also in the core of his or her communal culture. Actually, in psychology, when we refer to the term identity, then we say that how the identity of an individual is framed. The identity of the individual, identity मतलब पहचान, ଆମେ କହୁଛୁ ଯେ ମୋ ପେହଚାନ କ'ଣ, ମୋ ରେକଗ୍ନିସନ କ'ଣ, that is my identity. ମୁଁ ନିଜକୁ କେମିତି ଆଇଡେଣ୍ଟିଫାଇ କରୁଛି ମୋ ସହିତ, that is identity. So how identity is formed, that Erik Erikson has given the different stages of psychology psychosocial development. And what are those stages? There are 8 stages, and in different stages he has mentioned and described about what are the characteristics of that stage and how the psychosocial development occur in those stages. For example, I am telling you one or two. Suppose from the starting, from the birth to 12 or 18 months, you can say, then the stage according to Erikson is called as basic trust versus basic mistrust. ମାନେ ପିଲା ପାଖରେ ଟ୍ରଷ୍ଟ ଅର୍ ମିstrust ଆସିବ, that depends on that stage. ସେ ଷ୍ଟେଜରେ କ'ଣ ହୁଏ ନା, the infant form a loving, trusting relationship with the caregiver. ତାକୁ ଯଦି ସେ ଖାଇବା ଠିକ୍ ଟାଇମ୍ରେ ଦେଉଛି, ଏସବୁ ତା କେୟାର ନେଉଛି, ତ that type of feeling, that type of loving and trusting relationship, if it is developing, then it has an impact on the formation of identity of the child. Similarly, the last stage, similarly different stages are there, like your autonomy versus shame, initiative versus guilt, industry versus inferiority, identity versus role confusion, intimacy versus isolation, generativity versus stagnation, ego integrity versus despair. So all these stages help, or these are the stages through which the identity of individual is formed, and that identity which is formed is influenced by the family, the society where the individual live. The family also plays a role, the society where the individual live, that also plays a role in framing the identity. Okay. And the community, community means there are different, suppose tribes, so one can identify himself or herself with that tribe to which he or she belong. And the caste, or you can say the group of people where he is attached to organization, some organization may be there. So accordingly, you can identify yourself that who I am, what is my identity. So that similarly the individuals of every individual form their identity in this manner. And what happens sometimes ଯେମିତି କି ତମେ ମାନେ ନିଜେ ଯେତେବେଳେ ନିଜକୁ କେମିତି ଆଇଡେଣ୍ଟିଫାଇ କରୁଛ ହୁ ଆର୍ ୟୁ ତମକୁ ପଚାରିଲେ ସେ କ୍ୱେଶ୍ଚନ୍ ଆନ୍ସର ଯାହା ଦ୍ୟାଟ୍ ଇଜ୍ ୟୋର ଆଇଡେଣ୍ଟିଟି ଦ୍ୟାଟ୍ ଟାଇପ୍ ଅଫ୍ ଆଇଡେଣ୍ଟିଟି ୟୁ ହେଭ୍ ଫ୍ରେମ୍ଡ ଇନ୍ ୟୋର ମାଇଣ୍ଡ ଯେ ହୁ ଆର୍ ୟୁ ପଚାରାଯିବ ତମେ କିଏ ତମେ କହିବ ଯେ ମୁଁ ଜଣେ ଷ୍ଟୁଡେଣ୍ଟ ମୁଁ ଜଣେ ଟିଚର ମୁଁ ଏଟ୍ ଏ ଟାଇମ୍ ମୁଁ ଜଣେ ଟିଚର ହେଇପାରେ ମୁଁ ଜଣେ କୋଉ ବି କାଷ୍ଟକୁ ବିଲଙ୍ଗ କରୁଥିବା ଲୋକ ହେଇପାରେ ମୁଁ ଗୋଟେ ଫ୍ୟାମିଲିକୁ ବିଲଙ୍ଗ କରୁଥିବା ଗୋଟେ ସନ୍ ଅର୍ ଡଟର ହେଇପାରେ ବା ମୁଁ ଗୋଟେ ଫ୍ୟାମିଲିକୁ ବିଲଙ୍ଗ କରୁଥିବା ଗୋଟେ ଫାଦର ଅର୍ ମଦର ହେଇପାରେ ବା କିଛି ବି ହେଇପାରେ ତ ମୁଁ ଏବେ ଏଇ ଯୋଉ ଡିଫରେଣ୍ଟ ରୋଲକୁ ବର୍ତ୍ତମାନ ଆଇଡେଣ୍ଟିଫାଇ କଲି ମୋ ସହିତ ନିଜ ସହିତ ଦ୍ୟାଟ୍ ଇଜ୍ ମାଇ ଆଇଡେଣ୍ଟିଟି ଦ୍ୟାଟ୍ I have framed for myself. That is my identity. So similarly, in the society, you have some roles you have assigned to yourself that are related to the society. Some roles you have identified that is related to yourself, your family. So this is your sometimes that type of things happen with us. समटाइम्स आम कहीपर बहुत टाइम हुए जे आम पाखे मल्टीपल आइडेंटिटीज देखा जाए मल्टीपल आइडेंटिटी जोटा एग्जांपल कहली सेटा गोटे मल्टीपल आइडेंटिटीज रो आम एग्जांपल कहीपर तो दिस मल्टीपल आइडेंटिटीज दैट individual inhabit in relation to a range of social practices are themselves linked to larger structure of identity which interact with each other like your class, ethnicity, race, gender, sexuality, etc. They interact with each other. ଯେତିକି example କହିଲି ଯେ ମୁଁ who are you ପଚାରିଲେ ଯେତିକିଟା କହିବି ମୋର ପର୍ସନାଲ ରୋଲରେ ମୁଁ କହିପାରେ ଯେ ଆଇ ଏମ୍ ଏ ଡଟର ମୋ ଫ୍ୟାମିଲିକୁ ରିଲେଟ୍ କରିକି ଆଇ ଏମ୍ ଏ ସେମ୍ ଟାଇମ୍ ଆଇ ଏମ୍ ଏ ଟିଚର ତ ଟିଚର ଆଣ୍ଡ ଡଟର ଦିଜ୍ ରୋଲ୍ସ interact with each other. My caste interact with each other. My gender it also interact with each other so every identity I have created for myself those identities interact with each other like your class ethnicity race gender sexuality and they give rise to a hybrid identity ସେଥିପାଇଁ ବେଳେବେଳେ କୁହାଯାଏ ପଢ଼େଇଲା ବେଳେ ଯେ ତମର ଆଇଡେଣ୍ଟିଟି କ'ଣ କାହାକୁ ବି ପଚାରିବ ତୁମେ କ୍ୱେଶ୍ଚନ୍ ହ୍ୱାଟ୍ ଇଜ୍ ୟୋର ଆଇଡେଣ୍ଟିଟି ହୁ ଆର୍ ୟୁ sometimes they may not identify themselves who are they where if the identity is not properly framed in their mind so we have a hybrid identity so we can say here that there is no clear understanding of the concept of identity and it is used widely and loosely in reference to one's sense of self, one's feeling and ideas about oneself. जोटा कहली एबे gender identity, class identity, social role identity, the social role we occupy. So all these things contribute to our identity. In the process of socialization, identity is formed in the process of socialization. How we are socialized. Accordingly, we have created our identity. And we can say we construct our identities more actively out of materials presented to us during socialization process or in our various roles accordingly our identities are framed गोटे जे चोरी करछि जे सोसाइटी रे तार आइडेंटिटी केमिति फ्रेम हो ताको सोसाइटी से टाइप रो जिंस देछि से टाइप रो मटेरियल प्रेजेंट करछि से टाइप रो एनवायरनमेंट रे ग्रोन अप हेछि तार सोशलाइजेशन जो प्रोसेस रही से निजको से भाव में आइडेंटिफाई करि पारे okay so during the process of socialization identity comes and complex identities or the hybrid identities जोटा हमें कहले complex identities and hybrid identities are framed or of race, culture, language, religion, caste, and tribe comprise the Indian subcontinent. So, Indian subcontinent has this type of complex identities we have, and this multiplicity and multi-ethnicity lends the subcontinent its heterogeneous or pluralistic character. So, pluralism in a society is the presence of more than one identity among its population. Understood that pluralism is the presence of more than one identity. जो एग्जांपल टा कहली जे हमें मोर देन वन सहित हम निजको आइडेंटिफाई करछु आवर आइडेंटिटी इज मोर देन वन और हाइब्रिड आइडेंटिटी और कॉम्प्लेक्स आइडेंटिटी सो in our society the presence of more than one identity among the population, and that is called as pluralism. And it can be multi-ethnic, multi-religion, multilingual, and other multicultural categories. And India is the world's most complex and comprehensive pluralistic society. ଆମେ ଯୋଉଟା କହୁଛୁ ବିବିଧତା, we have diversity. But unity, we have unity in diversity. So diversity, that means it is more complex and comprehensive pluralistic society in the world. A historian, Romila Thapar, you might have heard the name. Indian society has always been a multi religious, multicultural society where identities have inevitably been multiple. Such a society is not itself secular but is conducive to the evolving of a secular society protecting the civil and human rights of all citizens. जोटा कथा ଆମେ କହିଲେ ବିବିଧତା ସେଟା ହିଷ୍ଟ୍ରିର ରୋମିଲା ଥାପର ମଧ୍ୟ এই କଥା କହିଛନ୍ତି. Then salient features of Indian society को ଆମେ ଆସିବା ଆଗରୁ ଆଉ କେତେଟା କଥା କହିବା. Okay, so then we will come to the salient features of Indian society. So, covering a span of almost 5,000 years since the existence of its first civilization, the Indian society is extremely old and complex in nature. It is primarily characterized by the existence of varying caste, faith, ethnicity, community, tribal identity, etc., which together produce a unique culture prevalent only in India but almost across the entire Indian subcontinent. जो कथा हमें कहले हमरो diversity अच्छी, that is the salient features of Indian society. Then traditionally social relations are often based on caste, ethnic group, race, etc., with extended family, village, community, and caste system being the three primary societal structure. However, there are great contrast between traditional India and the modern high-tech westernized India. Then the Indian society was dominated by a large number of poor people with a small elite characterized by um, the Maharajas and middle class made largely civil servant, though these classes are largely exist today except the middle class which is more diverse, but फिर भी we are in a modernization process and we are in a modern society, living in a modern society now. Then, in a modern society, also, what are the diversities here? What type of people, what categories of people are there? The first is your, you can say, the religious and linguistic minorities. We have the religious and religious people. Really, according to the religion, we have different category: Hindu, Muslim, Sikh, Isai, like this, and we have linguistic minority also. So the Constitution defines minority as communities constituted on the basis of religion or language, even when the language does not have a separate script, but that they can be taken under minority. And Hindus contribute to more than three-fourths of the population. This is the previous data. Present data, I do not know. I think it varies. The religious minorities comprised of Muslim, Christian, Sikh, Jain, Parsis, Anglo-Indian, Jews and Buddhist. So 91 census report is there. In now 2011 also census report you can collect what is the population. Then in the Indian states, the language gives each Indian state an official language. On the basis of language, if we will see, so every state has an official language, and people in these states who speak another language as their mother tongue are considered as linguistic minority or language minority or linguistic minority हमें कहबा सेमान को official language other than official language when they are speaking other language then linguistic minority people. For example, you can say Bengalis or Biharis living in the state of Assam, Tripura, and they are official following the other official language, but saying they are Bengali or Bihari, so they are linguistic minorities there. And what are the constitutional provisions for the minorities? Then, what are the constitutional provisions? The Constitution of India in Article 29 states that the minorities with a distinct language, script, or culture have the right to conserve the culture or script or language. They have the right. They can conserve their own language, script, or culture according to Article 29, and that shall not be denied admission into any educational institution maintained by the state or receiving aid out of the state fund. जो माने state fund किंबा state रू funding नौचंती, they cannot deny their admission to the educational institution on the basis of their language or script or culture. And Article 30 states that all minorities, whether based on religion or language, shall have the right to establish and administer educational institution of their choice. ସେମାନେ ଯୋଉ ବି ହେଇଥାନ୍ତୁ ରିଲିଜିଅନ ବା ଲାଙ୍ଗୁଏଜ ର ସେମାନଙ୍କର ନିଜ ଚଏସ ରେ ସେମାନେ ଗୋଟେ ଏଜୁକେଶନାଲ ଇନଷ୍ଟିଟ୍ୟୁସନ ଚାହିଁଲେ ତିଆରି କରିପାରିବେ. ୟୁ cannot deny them. The state shall not in granting aid to educational institutions discriminate against any educational institution on ground that is under the management of minority managed ଗୁଡ଼ାକ ତମେ ତାକୁ discriminate କରିପାରିବ ନାହିଁ. ସେଥିପାଇଁ ଆମର ହିନ୍ଦୁ ୟୁନିଭର୍ସିଟି ଯୋଉ ଭଳିଆ ଅଛି ମୁସଲିମ ୟୁନିଭର୍ସିଟି ବି ସେଭଳିଆ ଅଛି. ଖ୍ରୀଷ୍ଟିଆନ ଶିଖ ଇସାଇ ଯାହା ବି ଅଛି ସବୁ ସମାନ ଭାବରେ ଗଭର୍ଣ୍ଣମେଣ୍ଟ ତାକୁ ଟ୍ରିଟ୍ କରିବ. Article 350A of Constitution regarding facilities for instruction in the mother tongue at the primary stage of education states that it shall be the endeavor of every local authority within the state to provide adequate facilities for instruction in the mother tongue at the primary stage of education to children belonging to linguistic minority group. Article 350B again states that there shall be a special officer for linguistic minorities to be appointed by the President of India. And it should be the duty of the special officer to investigate all matters relating to safeguards provided for linguistic minority on the constitution and report the president upon those matters. So you cannot discriminate among them. That's why 350A and 350B article are working on that. So these are the minorities, and some of the caste are then identified here. The caste, like your caste, is derived from a Portuguese word casta, meaning breed or race or group. Basically, caste refers to people belonging to the same breed, and different caste with maybe SC, scheduled caste SC people. जानते हैं the caste regarded by the virtue of their economic and social status and form nearly 19% of Indian population according to 91 census, but you can refer to 11 census also. And scheduled tribes India has the second largest tribal population in the world, and tribals have traditionally been distinct cultural groups that have evolved in isolation from mainstream culture. And mostly they are populated. The tribals are concentrated in India in a northeast region, middle region including Bihar, hilly areas of Odisha, southeastern Madhya Pradesh, part of northern Andhra, west of India, comprising parts of eastern Gujarat, western Madhya Pradesh, and southern Rajasthan, Nilgiri Hills. So everywhere you can find the more concentration of tribal people. And the And what happened to them, the mortality rate among the tribals are higher and the literacy rate are lower. And due to the influence of Christian missionaries, the literacy rate in the northeast and among the sections of Santal, Munda and Orangs in above average, yet only small number of them has entered professions and senior level of bureaucracy. ଏବେ ଯେତେବେଳେ ଗୋଟେ ନ୍ୟୁଜ୍ରେ ବି ଆସୁଛି ଆପଣମାନେ ଦେଖିଥିବେ ସୋ then what are the different constitutional provisions for scheduled caste and scheduled tribes? Religious linguistic minority gala ये होची गोटे तार 91 census रो breakup type. Okay, this is the breakup. You can see what are the percentage. Hindu, Christian 91. You can refer to recent census. This is the recent census is also here. This is 2011 census. Hindus 96%, Muslim 17.22 crore. That means 14.2%. Like this. This is the census report. This is article 29 what I told you. This is article 29. This is article 30. Then article 350A, article 350B, the special officer for linguistic minority. Then what are the constitutional provisions for SC and ST people? The Constitution of India provides for special provisions for the advancement of SC and STs. So Article 46 of the Directive Principle of State Policy is comprehensive article comprising both the development and regulatory aspect. And what is that Article 46? So the state shall promote with special care the educational and economic interest of the weaker section of people and in particular of scheduled caste and scheduled tribes and shall protect them from social injustice and all forms of exploitation. So to protect them against exploitation, Article 46 is there in the directive principle of state policy. Then educational and cultural safeguards are provided to SCs and STs under Article 15, Article 15(4), which empowers the state to make any special provisions for the advancement of any socially and educationally backward classes of citizens or for SCs and STs, and this provision has enabled the state to reserve seats for SCs, STs in the educational institutions, including technical, engineering, and medical college, and in scientific and specialized courses. And Article 330 is also there. 332 is also there. 330 provides for reservation of seats for SC and STs in the Lok Sabha. Article 332 provides for reservation of seats for SCs and STs in the state Vidhan Sabha or legislative assembly. Then Article 334 is also there. Article 334 is also there. 16, Article 16, Article 335, all these articles, what they are saying. Article 334 was laid down the provision relating to reservation of seats for SC/ST in Lok Sabha and state Vidhan Sabha would cease to have effect on expiration of a period of 10 years from the commencement of constitution. This is also there, Article 334, but it is what happened, you have to investigate about it. This article has since amended 4 times, extending the said period by 10 years on each occasion, and this provision was to expire in January 2000 by its, but it continues to exist. So Article 334 is saying about reservation, but starting from the constitution up to 10 years it was valid, but 4 times amendment done, and its validity extended to 2000, but still now it exists up to 2025. Then service safeguards under Article 16(4) empowers the state to make any provision for the reservation in appointments or posts in favor of any backward class of citizen which in the opinion of state is not adequately represented in service under the state. State power. This is according to Article 335. The claims of the members of scheduled caste and scheduled tribes shall be taken into consideration consistently with the maintenance of efficiency of administration in the making of appointments to services and posts in connection with the affairs of union or a state. This is Article 335. So for SC and ST people, you can say Article 46, Article 15(4), Part 4, Article 332, 330, 334, Article 16, Article 335. These are the articles for safeguarding the scheduled caste and scheduled tribe. Then educational. Then educational status of minorities, SC and ST. What is their status? We will see. Then we will proceed to government strategies and provision. Then educational status ଏବେ କ'ଣ ଅଛି? Educational backwardness of minority is revealed by the NSS data as well as the studies done in this field in rural India, and it was found that in rural India 51% Hindu males were illiterate, but figures of Muslim males was 58%. And the percentage of literacy in urban India was 25.3% Hindu male and 42% Muslim males. So like this, there is a data, literacy data. How many percentage are there in elementary school, secondary school, high school, and what is the percentage? You can analyze the data by yourself. How many scheduled castes, male and female, scheduled tribe, male and female exist there, and till now also we are maintaining this in a separately in every institution everywhere. How many male female along with how many ST male, SC male, like this. Then what are the government strategies and provisions or programs for them? So government has taken so many steps, especially in the last decades, to tackle the problems of educational backwardness. If minorities, especially Muslims, and the measures adopted by the government are found in the Program of Action 1986, NEP 86, Program of Action 1992, Program of Action 86 रे policy है, Program of Action तार आउट है modify है कि 1992 रे जोटा हमें discussion करिचु. And the annual report of Department of Education of the Ministry of HRD, Human Resource Development, and it may also be noted that both the 86 policy and 92 Program of Action emphasize the need of special efforts to be made to bring the educationally backward minorities on par with the rest of the society and to make them participate fully in the national development activities. So it has been mentioned, it has been told, you all are aware about this. So in this context also, UGC also started a coaching scheme in 1984. 84 रे खाली नुहे, मझी मझी coaching scheme आसे तांको पई by UGC also to prepare students from educationally backward minorities to enable them to compete in competitive examination for jobs and for admission into professional courses. And so many NGOs are also working in the present condition. You can find so many NGOs, so many voluntary organizations. They are working and providing them free coaching in regard to civil service examination and other examinations. This is also continuing now. Okay, then gender identity. Women are another category of people there, women. And gender identity and women in India. What is the literacy rate? The literacy level of urban female was 63.94% in 1991, and in rural female 30.35. କିନ୍ତୁ ଏବେ ବଢିଛି ସେଇ ଯୋଉ ପରସେଣ୍ଟେଜଟା ଏବେ ଯଦି ଆମେ ସେନ୍ସସ୍ ରିପୋର୍ଟ ଦେଖିବା ତ ଯଦି ଥିବ ଆମେ ଦେଖିବା ଯେ ସେ ଯୋଉ ସେନ୍ସସ୍ ବଢିଛି ସୋ ଦେନ୍ କନଷ୍ଟିଟ୍ୟୁସନାଲ ପ୍ରୋଭିଜନ୍ସ ଫର ଓମେନ୍ ତାଙ୍କ ପାଇଁ କନଷ୍ଟିଟ୍ୟୁସନାଲ ପ୍ରୋଭିଜନ କ'ଣ କ'ଣ କରାହେଇଛି ଥ୍ରୁ ଦ ଫଣ୍ଡାମେଣ୍ଟାଲ ରାଇଟ୍ସ ଆଣ୍ଡ ଡିରେକ୍ଟିଭ ପ୍ରିନ୍ସିପଲ ଅଫ ଷ୍ଟେଟ୍ ପଲିସି the Constitution of India guarantees certain rights and privileges to women, like your Article 14 confers on men and women equal rights and opportunities in the political, economic, and social spheres. Article 15 Article 15 coach prohibits discrimination against any citizen on the ground of religion, race, caste, sex, etc. More specifically, Article 15 3 contains, subpart 3 contains an enabling provision for the state to make affirmative discrimination in favor of women. Okay. So varieties of provisions are there, like Article 16 provides for equality of opportunity in matter of public appointment for all citizens. Article 39A mentioned that state shall direct its policy towards securing to all citizens, men and women equally, the right to a means of livelihood. कम बेसी दे परिबानी बोली अच्छे बट फिर भी सेटा करा होची बट आर्टिकल 39A states that article 39E ensures equal pay. Finally, the renunciation of practices derogatory to dignity of women are imposed by the constitution as a fundamental duty of every citizen through article 51A and 51E. ସବୁଥିରେ equal right କଥା କୁହାହଉଛି ଏବେ ବି still now it is continuing, still now in the higher education institution the women helpline number and आपतकालीन number ऐसे डिस्प्ले କରାଯାଉଛି ତାକୁ ଡିସପ୍ଲେ କରିକି ତାକୁ ସ୍ପେଶିଆଲି ଓମେନ୍ ଏମ୍ପାୱରମେଣ୍ଟ ପାଇଁ ସେସବୁ ଏବେ ମଧ୍ୟ ଚାଲିଛି फॉर इक्वालिटी एजुकेशन फॉर इक्वालिटी पे ये सब काम चली बर्तमान एजुकेशन फॉर इक्वालिटी द गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया अपॉइंटेड नेशनल कमिटी मध्ये ता ऊपर करा है चेयरमैन अंडर द चेयरमैनशिप ऑफ दुर्गाबाई देशमुख दुर्गाबाई देशमुख कमिशन कमिटी को आउची यूनिवर्सल एनरोलमेंट द अटेम्प्ट ऑफ एक्सपेंशन ऑफ गर्ल्स एजुकेशन हाँ ये खाली दुर्गाबाई देशमुख कमिटी नहीं आउरी किछिटा कमिटी थिला ता भितरे जोतरे कि दुर्गाबाई देशमुख कमिटी जोटा हेतिला से हेतिला 1958-59 रे हंसा मेहता कमिटी 1960-64 रे हेतिला आउरी गोटे अछि भक्तवत्सलम कमिटी 1963 रे हेतिला and the most significant measures adopted by the government was the enactment of national policy on education 1986 and the program of action 1992. The policy proposes a dual track approach designed to promote simultaneously adult literacy and primary education with a focus on girls and other disadvantaged groups. Also integration of gender perspective in all aspect of planning. Gender perspective was also integrated. Also that type of workshop has already been done in our country, that ତାକୁ ଏଇଭଳିଆ କୁହାଯାଇଛି, ଏବେ ବି କୁହାହେଉଥିବ ଯେ ଟିଚର ମାନଙ୍କୁ ଯେ ଆପଣ ଯେଉଁ ବହି ପଢ଼ଉଛନ୍ତି, ଯେଉଁ କଣ୍ଟେଣ୍ଟ ପଢ଼ଉଛନ୍ତି, ସେଇ କଣ୍ଟେଣ୍ଟରେ କୋଉଠି ଇଣ୍ଟିଗ୍ରେଟ୍ କରାଯାଇପାରିବ ଜେଣ୍ଡର ପର୍ସପେକ୍ଟିଭକୁ, ସେ ଜିନିଷ ଆଇଡେଣ୍ଟିଫାଇ କରିକି ଆପଣମାନଙ୍କୁ ଦିଆହେଉଛି। ମଝିରେ ଟ୍ରେନିଂ ଦିଆହେଇଥିବ କେତେବେଳେ ଯେ ଇଣ୍ଟିଗ୍ରେସନ୍ କେମିତି ହେଇଛି, କୋଉ ଜାଗାରେ ଇଣ୍ଟିଗ୍ରେସନ୍ ହେଇଛି, ବହିରେ ଲେଖା ହେଉଛି ଯେତେବେଳେ ଜେଣ୍ଡର ପର୍ସପେକ୍ଟିଭ ସେଠି କ'ଣ ଅଛି, ସୋ ୟୁ ହାଭ୍ ଟୁ ଇଣ୍ଟିଗ୍ରେଟ୍ ଇନ୍ ୟର୍ teaching also. So there is a pronounced policy shift from equalization of educational opportunity to education for women's empowerment. And recently also government has enacted the national policy for empowerment of women in 2001. The main thrust of the policy is to bring about an overall advancement in the status of women so that they become active partner in development initiatives of the country. And in ninth and 10th 5-year plan, education of girls and women's empowerment are seen as drive arms of national development. With emphasis 9th and 10th ରେ ଦିଆଯାଇଥିଲା. And in the ninth plan, priority is given for expansion of higher education in unserved areas with focus on improving the coverage of women and disadvantaged groups by using financial assistance as a major factor. फाइनान्शियल आसिस्टेंस ଦେଇକି ହିଁ ତାକୁ ଆମେ ଗ୍ରୋ କରିବା, ଏମ୍ପାୱାର କରିପାରିବା ବୋଲି ଏସବୁ କଥା କରାହେଇଥିଲା। ଏବେ ବି ଆପଣଙ୍କର ତାକୁ ଏମ୍ପାୱାର କରିବା ପାଇଁ ସେ ଯେଉଁ ସୁଭଦ୍ରା ଯୋଜନା ମାଧ୍ୟମରେ ମଧ୍ୟ ପଇସା ଦିଆହେଉଛି, ନାଇଁ କି? Then improvement program ମଧ୍ୟ ତା ପାଇଁ କିଛିଟା କରାହେଇଛି, ଯେମିତିକି ଦ ରେକମେଣ୍ଡେସନ ମେଡ୍ ବାଇ ଦ କେବ୍, ସିଏ ବି କ'ଣ ସେଣ୍ଟ୍ରାଲ ଆଡଭାଇଜରୀ ବୋର୍ଡ ଅଫ ଏଜୁକେସନ for improvement of women education should be implementing, and for this purpose 100% assistance should be provided. The program include construction of teacher quarter, ଦିଆହେଉଛି provision of school teachers, जो लेडी टीचर ମାନଙ୍କୁ appointment ଦେବା ପାଇଁ provision of allowance for lady teachers working in the villages, provision of hostel, school uniform, midday meal, sanitary blocks, like this. Different types of provisions are there. The facilities in isolated and backward areas, the girl students of backward, hilly and isolated areas should be provided with facilities such as free transport, cycle ଦିଆହଉଥିଲା ମଝିରେ, cycle, free transport, free residential accommodation to encourage them to get education. Education for adult women ପାଇଁ କ'ଣ ଅଛି ନା Central Social Welfare Board should start condensed courses to give suitable education to adult women. Then scholarship should be provision for an adequate number of scholarship to encourage girls to continue their education. Then encouragement to co-education where it is difficult to start separate schools for girls. Co-education should be encouraged. देन आम जो कहले जे हंसा मेहता कमिटी गोटे कराइला दुर्गा भाई देशमुख, तो ये किछिटा हंसा मेहता कमिटी रो रिकमेंडेशंस गुड़ाक जस्ट फॉर नॉलेज ये दे दिया। The National Council of Women's Education appointed Hansa Mehta Committee in 1962 to suggest measures for improvement of women's education. Co-education should be adopted and encouraged at the primary stage. Separate primary school or middle school for girls should be started where there is such demand and where there is adequate enrollment. And separate and co-educational institution can be started at secondary school and college stage. Parents should send their daughters to the institution they like, either co-education or to separate school. Girls should be encouraged to study science and mathematics at the higher secondary stage. Number of women teachers should be increased in primary schools. Women teachers should also be appointed in all institutions at the secondary and college stage, which are meant for boys but where girls are also admitted. Girls should be provided with necessary facilities such as scholarship, free transport, and stipend. There should be a common curriculum for boys and girls at the primary and middle stage. So these are some of the recommendations of Hansa Mehta Committee. And another committee which was framed in 1963, there are some recommendations like Bhaktavasalam Commission 1963. The National Council for Women Education endorsed the suggestion made by the Union Education Minister that a small committee should be appointed to look into the reasons for the lack of public support, particularly in rural areas, for women education. The chairman of the National Council for Women Education appointed a committee in May 1963 under the chairmanship of Sri M. Bhaktavasalam, the Chief Minister of Tamil Nadu. Feels the public cooperation in direct public cooperation should be encouraged in such as establishment of private school, construction of school building, provision of textbooks, written material to the needy children. Needy children means this is for the girls' children. Organization of school betterment committee and improvement conference, provision of midday meal. States should take up the responsibility of creating public opinion in favor of women education. For this purpose, it may adopt seminar, radio talks, school improvement, audiovisual aids, and distribution of information pamphlets, organization of enrollment drives. So all these are the recommendation. Provision of pre-primary school. It is essential that the pre-primary school should be attached with primary school, particularly in the rural areas, and these schools will help the children to get accustomed to the schooling at the early stage. So these are some of the recommendations made towards women education by Bhakta Vasalam Commission Committee. Then you can find in Kothari Commission what is about women education. The Kothari Commission, the gap between men education and women education should be closed by considering women's education as a major programs in education for some years. Moreover, determine the bold efforts should be made to face the difficulty involved in expansion of women education. And there should be a special administrative machinery to look after the education of girls and women. So, excuse me, just a minute. Okay, so these are the recommendations of Kothari Commission. The special plan should be prepared for the purpose and the funds required for them should be provided on a priority basis. Then effort should be made to accelerate the expansion of girls' education. All the secondary level development of education of girls should be increased. The ratio of male-female education should be 2:1 from 3:1 in 20 years. So like this, these are the Kothari Commission recommendations. Okay. Then we will come to conflicts in India. So first of all, we came to know that what is the identity, how the multiple identities exist in India as a pluralistic society. Then due to this multiple identity, when there are different types of people with different types of identity, then it is obvious that there will be conflicts. So that's why conflicts in India, we will discuss about the conflicts. So, so this is also there. One would expect pluralism to be unique character of a society. Opposite. So as there is pluralism, there must be conflict. So what is the reason of conflict? Why there is conflict, and what is that? How to resolve it? Economic globalization has led to homogenization and marginalization among the communities which are feeling the impact of homogenization, invasion on local traditions, and privatization of the social and the communal, there is a strong urge to guard and preserve their identities against these things. There is also trend among those who are economically marginalized to consolidate their primordial identities as a defense mechanism. So identity को लेके ही conflict mainly create होची. So economic globalization is the increasing interdependence of, these are the explanation what is economic globalization. It is the increasing interdependence of economies around the world, and homogenization means the process of different cultures becoming more similar to each other. Different culture ଏବେ ମିଶି ହେଇକି ଯୋଉ homogenize ହେଇଯାଇଛି, ମାନେ ଯେ ଯାହା କଲଚରକୁ ନ କରିକି ଅନ୍ୟ କଲଚରରୁ ଆଣିକି ମଧ୍ୟ ସେ ଟ୍ରାଡିସନକୁ ତାଙ୍କ ଇଏରେ ଇନକ୍ଲୁଡ କରୁଛନ୍ତି ତାଙ୍କ କଲଚରରେ. There is homogenization. Marginalization is the process of being outside of the dominant society and losing one's own culture. Separate ହେଇଯାଇଛି, ସେ marginalize ହେଇଯାଇଛି means separate. So cultural invasion means it is particularly serious in its effect where the invading culture overwhelms and destroy the integrity of receiving culture. ଗୋଟେ କଲଚର ତାର ଅରିଜିନାଲି ଯାହା ଥିବ ଅନ୍ୟ କଲଚର ଏଭଳିଆ ଭାବରେ ସେଠି ଇନଭେସନ ହଉଛି ଯୋଉଥିରେ କି ସେ ଯୋଉ ପର୍ଟିକୁଲାର କଲଚର ଯୋଉଟା ଥିଲା ପ୍ରିଭିୟସଲି ସେ ପୁରା ତାକୁ ଡେଷ୍ଟ୍ରୟ କରିଦଉଛି, ସେଟାକୁ କଲଚରାଲ ଇନଭେସନ କହିବା. Then economic marginalization means the people do not have the same chances as others to contribute to and benefit from the economy. All are not benefiting, that is economic marginalization. They do not have the chance to get a good job or could not attend a trade school to equip them with the skill to enter into a certain sector. That is economic marginalization. ତାକୁ କରିବା ପାଇଁ ଏବେ ଏଜୁକେସନ ଯେତେବେଳେ ଆରଟିଆଇ ଆକ୍ଟ ହେଲା ସେତେବେଳେ କରିଦିଆ ହେଲା ଯେ ସବୁ ସ୍କୁଲ ଏନି ସ୍କୁଲ ଯୋଉ ସ୍କୁଲ ହେଇଥାଉ ସେ ଟ୍ରେଡ୍ ସ୍କୁଲ ହଉ ସେ ଗୋଟେ ଯୋଉ ବି ସ୍କୁଲ ହଉ ଏନି ସ୍କୁଲ 25% ରିଜର୍ଭେସନ ସିଟ୍ ରଖିବ, ସେଥିପାଇଁ ଆରଟିଆଇ କରିଛି. So these are the regions, as you know, the regions for the higher education. Then what is the role of higher education in solving the societal problems? So historians, archaeologists, and men of later chronicle and the past present in a way which shape the future and nurture the roots that bind communities together. But universities, the students as well as teachers, everywhere are uniquely motivated to keep alive the values of freedom and universality, of individual dignity as well as brotherhood of men, and witness the fear that all tyrants have of university campuses, and how universities everywhere traditionally transcend purely regional or national loyalties. Universities are, in general, also the greatest source of change, not just technological change but social and cultural as well. The university years are the most impressionable years where your mental and spiritual horizons are widened by contact with the classics of the past or with grandeur of science and indeed with the other minds struggling similarly to break through this. Se କହୁଛି that is the very diversity of people are coming to the university, diversities of teachers are there. This is the center for creation of knowledge. So creation also preservation of culture. You come across different types of culture. So this is the actual place where the things can be solved. So, despite the prestigious and privileged place assigned to institution of higher education, few initiatives in tackling social and political problems have been undertaken. And the access to higher education has rapidly increased in the last years, and benefit is limited to only specific special classes or group. And some communities and groups are underrepresented in higher education. Due to this reason, higher education is viewed as elitist and as a vehicle to perpetuate social inequalities. And then the question arises how university society interface can take place to tackle the social problems. The first thing is creating new knowledge. The universities are actually a microcosm of the Indian society. The elements of diversity and democracy are common to the university. In view of this reality, the universities can no longer be content only with imparting knowledge. That already every policy has told that not only impart knowledge, create knowledge. Universities have the potential to draw from the stock of knowledge and pave the way to provide solutions for social, cultural, and economic development. Considering their vast resources, universities are in a better position to adapt knowledge to solve specific problems and challenges. So, not only impart knowledge, you have to use the knowledge to solve specific problems and challenges. And related to this aspect is the knowledge construction process, which relates to the extent to which teachers help students to understand, investigate, and determine how the implicit cultural assumptions, frame of reference, perspective, and biases within a discipline influence the ways in which knowledge is constructed. And it is important for students to understand how knowledge is constructed in all disciplines, social scientists as well as physical biological scientists, although at the cutting edge of their discipline, teach their students a body of truth which is not to be questioned or critically analyzed. Students need to understand, even science, how cultural assumptions, perspectives, and frame of reference influence the questions that researchers ask and formulate. So, this type of things, creation of knowledge or constructs of knowledge, a multidisciplinary system, interdisciplinary system, then Indian knowledge system, the cultural assumptions, everything are suggested in National Education Policy 2020 also, that you adopt all these things in the educational institutions like your higher education institution, so that knowledge creation, along with the knowledge creation, we can avoid the conflict, or we can solve the conflict, or we cannot go to the conflict. Okay, so this is the role of creation of new knowledge. The next way is the content integration. Content integration deals with the way teachers use examples and content from variety of cultures and groups to illustrate the key concepts, principles, generalizations, and theories in their subject area or discipline. This is also very important, and this fusion, however, should be logical, and not contrived. More opportunities exist for the integration of ethnic and cultural content in some subject areas than other. In the social sciences, the language, arts, music, and home science, economics are frequent and ample opportunities for teachers to use ethnic and cultural content to illustrate concepts, themes, and principles. So, content integration is an essential area in the teaching process, and teachers are the key to integrate all these things in the content area. Do not say that this content is not included in our chapter. Like if you are a science student, that do not say that it cannot be, culture cannot be integrated in science. Or if you are a social science teacher, they do not say that it cannot be integrated in our subject. Everywhere, every subject, it can be integrated, culture can be integrated, and a positive mindset can be prepared in the students, among the students, so that we can help the society in the conflict resolution. We have the mindset first to orient them positively towards the different culture and accept, so that an acceptance mindset will be created so that we can avoid conflict. Then the third way is the equity pedagogy. And equity pedagogy exists when teachers modify their teaching in ways that will facilitate the academic achievement of students from diverse cultural, ethnic, and gender groups. Research indicates that low income students as a group tend to differ from the middle class student in some important characteristics related to motivation. Low income students tend to be external in their motivational orientation, which means that they tend to attribute their success or failure to outside forces or individuals and not to their own efforts. Middle income students tend to be internal in their orientation. These characteristics of low income and middle class students have implications for teaching. The motivational characteristics of low income and middle class students is just one example of how teaching can be modified to increase the academic achievement of students from diverse social class, cultural, and gender groups. And other strategies include the use of cooperative teaching strategies. And it is very essential in the present context. The equity pedagogy, equity should be provided. Equity means that the give those things to those person who need how much, so accordingly you can do the equity. So you can use the cooperative teaching strategies to avoid this type of disparities among the low, middle, or high class pupils. So that is the responsibility of the teacher to adopt an equity pedagogy and prepare the mindset of the teacher is the first and foremost thing to be adopted. The next is your civilizing the human mind. Education has a fundamental significance in development and progress of human society. It is the channel for creating awareness and appreciation for diversity, widening the understanding of varying groups of people, intensifying sensibilities of cultures and beliefs, and inculcating the spirit of inquiry and questioning of accepted truths. In other words, it can be said that education has the capacity to free the human mind from ignorance and false sense of self perseverance, preservation, self preservation. So, civilizing the human mind is very essential and it can be done through higher education. So, instead of imparting only the knowledge, the human mind should be given importance. That's why you can also observe in the present day that yoga and various mindfulness activities which are uh, helping to civilize the human mind, that things are integrated already in the education system, so that the we can civilize the human mind. Then an empowering institutional culture. Another important aspect involves restructuring the culture and organization of the institute so that the students from diverse ethnic, language, religion, and gender groups will experience equality. So this variable must be examined and addressed by the entire teachers, head, vice principal, vice chancellor, or principal, support staff, and everybody. It involves an examination of the latent and manifest culture and organization to determine the extent to which it fosters or hinders educational equality. So, an institutional culture is very important, and about this, NEP 2020 has also shouted to develop an important school culture or institutional culture. Institutional culture is very important in shaping or giving the educational equity. So if you want equity and equality, then you have to change your culture. You have to, if you want to change your culture, then you have to set the mindset of the people of your organization who are working in the higher education institutions. So that is very important point, that institutional culture need to be empowered. We have an empowered culture, we need to develop an empowered culture. Okay. What I honest. The next is the creating opportunities for livelihood and growth. An important condition for democratization in higher education is the provision for equal opportunity to access for all classes and groups. University education has found popularity as the ladder to achieve status and career satisfaction. And in spite of massive expansion, higher education has failed to equalize educational opportunities and increase employability after completion of studies. In following the ideal of providing greater access, there has been a trend towards lowering of academic standards of university at times. This is the primarily the reason for fragmentation of higher education as far as quality and differences in employment opportunities are concerned. This is a very important and serious issue in the higher education context, that sometimes it you have to lower sometimes it is a trend now to towards lowering the academic standards of the universities. If higher education is unable to keep pace with the demands of rapidly changing economy and employment sector, it will result in widespread unemployment of the educated. And there is a necessity to expand the capacity of institution in fields related to natural science, social development, and technology. So, what happened here? Creating opportunity in livelihood and growth. You can see କହୁଛି ଯେ ଆପଣ ଯେତେବେଳେ ବେଳେବେଳେ କ'ଣ ହେଉଛି ନା ଯେବେ ଷ୍ଟାଣ୍ଡାର୍ଡକୁ ତ କମେଇବା ପାଇଁ ପଡୁଛି, ବହୁତ ଜାଗାରେ ଏଇଭଳିଆ ହେଉଛି, ବହୁତ ସାରା ୟୁନିଭର୍ସିଟି ଖୋଲି ଯାଇଛି ଆଉ ଯୋଉଠିକି କ୍ୱାଲିଟି ମେଣ୍ଟେନ୍ ହେଇପାରୁନି, ଏଥିପାଇଁ ଷ୍ଟାଣ୍ଡାର୍ଡ କମେଇକି ତାଙ୍କୁ ଅଧିକା ମାର୍କ ଦିଆହେଉଛି ବା ଯାହା କରୁଛି, ଯୋଉଟାକି ତାଙ୍କର ସ୍କିଲ୍ ଏନହାନ୍ସ କରୁନି ଆଉ ସେମାନେ ଏମ୍ପ୍ଲୟମେଣ୍ଟ ପାଇବାରେ ପ୍ରୋବ୍ଲେମ ଫେସ୍ କରୁଛନ୍ତି। ତ ନ୍ୟାସନାଲ ଡେଭଲପମେଣ୍ଟ Then national development, the concept of democratization should extend to include a commitment by university in regard to their own responsibilities towards nation development, and their role would include national and social integration with emphasis on needs to low income and marginalized groups. The research and interdisciplinary approach for problem solving. So, from the very beginning, it is said that research is a very essential component of the higher education institution, and it is apparent that the research potential of higher education in various aspects of integrated development can be used to help to provide solutions for development. And the capability of higher education institutions to undertake the process of analysis and reflection and to promote a spirit of critical inquiry needs to be utilized to the maximum. So, and these are the problems and how to resolve the conflict of the society, contemporary Indian society through higher education. This is all about this, and then we will see what is World Trade Organization and higher education. Okay, I want to show you one video. You can understand this World Trade Organization better from that. What is the history, how it is functioning, that you can understand. But I do not know whether this video will play here or not. You please tell me whether it is playing or not. Then we will go to discuss this. Are you able to listen this? Are you able to?
No, ma'am. No, ma'am.
No. I think now you will be able to hear. Wait.
ग्लोबल ट्रेड रूल्स बनाता है और उसे फॉलो करवाता है।
Now, can you listen?
डब्ल्यूटीओ का मेन मोटिव सभी कंट्रीज के बीच फ्री, ऑर्डरली और स्मूथ तरीके से वर्ल्ड ट्रेड को बढ़ावा देना है। इसके साथ ही ये भाग लेने वाली कंट्रीज के बीच ट्रेड एग्रीमेंट पर बातचीत के लिए एक प्लेटफॉर्म भी देता है। डब्ल्यूटीओ इंटरनेशनल ट्रेड में प्रोडक्ट्स, सर्विसेज और इंटेलेक्चुअल प्रॉपर्टी को रेगुलेट करता है और पार्टिसिपेटिंग कंट्रीज के बीच में ट्रेड एग्रीमेंट्स होने पर नेगोशिएशंस भी करता है। आइए जानते हैं इसकी शुरुआत कैसे हुई। द स्टोरी बिहाइंड द डब्ल्यूटीओ। दोस्तों, ये बात है साल 1930 की, जब दुनिया का सामना होता है ग्रेट इकोनॉमिक डिप्रेशन से। दरअसल फर्स्ट वर्ल्ड वॉर के एंड होने के बाद से ही लगभग सभी देश अपनी इकोनॉमी को आगे बढ़ाने के लिए प्रोटेक्शनिज्म की पॉलिसी को अपना रहे थे। इस नीति के तहत सभी देशों ने टैरिफ यानी टैक्स को बढ़ा दिया था। कहीं ना कहीं प्रोटेक्शनिज्म पॉलिसी अपनाने के कारण ही 1930 में पूरे वर्ल्ड में आर्थिक मंदी आ गई। इस दौरान दुनिया भर में लाखों लोगों की नौकरियां गई, बैंक्स बंद हो गए और कई लाखों लोग गरीबी रेखा से नीचे आ गए। इस आर्थिक महामंदी की शुरुआत जरूर अमेरिका में हुई थी, लेकिन धीरे धीरे पूरी दुनिया को इसने अपनी चपेट में ले लिया था। बेसिकली इसकी शुरुआत एक बहुत बड़े स्टॉक मार्केट क्रैश से हुई थी। ये सितंबर 1929 में हुआ था, जिसके बाद इन्वेस्टर्स के मन में एक डर बैठ गया था कि कुछ ना कुछ गड़बड़ होने वाली है और एक बहुत बड़ा इंपेंडिंग स्टॉक मार्केट क्रैश आने ही वाला है। धीरे धीरे ये डर बढ़ता गया और इवेंचुअली 29 अक्टूबर 1929 को एक बहुत बड़ा वर्ल्ड वाइड स्टॉक मार्केट क्रैश हुआ, जिसे पूरी दुनिया आज ब्लैक ट्यूसडे के नाम से जानती है। इसी को आर्थिक महामंदी की शुरुआत माना जाता है। ये आर्थिक महामंदी कितनी बड़ी थी, इसे आप एक एग्जाम्पल से समझ सकते हैं। आप सभी को 2008 का इकोनॉमिक मेल्टडाउन जरूर याद होगा, जब बहुत सारे देश इकोनॉमिकली बहुत ज्यादा वीक हो गए थे। यूएस में तो इस बात को लेकर बहुत चिंता थी कि उनकी इकोनॉमी कहां जाएगी। 2008 के रिसेशन के वक्त ग्लोबल जीडीपी में 5% की गिरावट दर्ज की गई थी। वहीं ग्रेट इकोनॉमिक डिप्रेशन के समय यह आंकड़ा 27% था। दोस्तों, आप इसी से अंदाजा लगा सकते हैं कि 1929 से 1932 के बीच यानी सिर्फ 3 सालों में वर्ल्ड जीडीपी में कितना बड़ा डाउनफॉल हुआ था। इतना ही नहीं, इस मंदी का असर 1932 से भी काफी आगे तक जारी रहता है। आप इमेजिन कर सकते हो कि कितनी बड़ी आर्थिक मंदी आई थी। अब यह समझ लेते हैं कि इसका उन देशों के लोगों पर क्या प्रभाव पड़ा। इस चीज को समझने के बाद ही हम समझ पाएंगे उन देशों ने जो कदम उठाए वो क्यों उठाए। इस आर्थिक महामंदी में 10,000 से ज्यादा बैंकों पर ताला लग गया, जिसकी वजह से 90 लाख लोगों की सेविंग्स जो कि बैंक्स में रखी हुई थी वो खतरे में आ गई। उसके अलावा जिन लोगों ने लोन ले रखा था वो लोन और ज्यादा बढ़ गए, क्योंकि प्राइसेस और इनकम दोनों करीब 20% से 50% तक गिर गए और डेट्स जो थे उतने ही रहे। तो आप समझ सकते हैं कि जब इनकम उतनी होगी नहीं और जॉब भी नहीं होगी तो लोग अपनी उधारी कैसे चुकाएंगे। इस आर्थिक महामंदी की वजह से कई लोग, खासतौर पर जो लोग यूएस में थे, वो पॉवर्टी की ओर धकेले गए। आर्थिक महामंदी के इस तरह भयावह परिणाम देखने के बाद उभर कर आया एक प्रोटेक्शनिस्ट वेस्ट। प्रोटेक्शनिस्ट वेस्ट यानी जैसे ही आर्थिक महामंदी ने अपने साइड इफेक्ट दिखाने शुरू किए, तब बहुत सारी इंडस्ट्रियलाइज्ड कंट्री डर गई और उनमें से सबसे पहले यूएस ने इस आर्थिक महामंदी यानी इकोनॉमिक ग्रेट डिप्रेशन को काउंटर करने के लिए यह कदम उठाया।
एक बच्ची थी हमारे यहाँ पे, मिनल नाम की, 13 दिन की रहेंगी, तो लड़की हुई, इस वजह से उसको
इस कदम के तहत यूएस ने स्मूथ हॉली टैरिफ एक्ट को 1930 में पास किया। इस एक्ट के अनुसार यूएस ने अपने इंपोर्ट टैरिफ्स बहुत ज्यादा बढ़ा दिए। मतलब अगर यूएस में आपको कुछ भी इंपोर्ट करना है तो उसके लिए आपको बहुत हाई टैरिफ्स देने पड़ते थे। यूएस के इस कदम को देखकर बाकी वेस्टर्न डेवलप्ड कंट्रीज जैसे कि ब्रिटेन, जर्मनी, फ्रांस, नेदरलैंड्स, बेल्जियम एटसेट्रा ने भी सिमिलर एक्ट्स पास करना शुरू कर दिए। इससे अल्टीमेटली ये हुआ कि सिर्फ यूएस का ही नहीं बल्कि बाकी इंडस्ट्रियलाइज्ड वर्ल्ड का इंपोर्ट और एक्सपोर्ट भी करीब 40% से 60% तक डिक्लाइन कर गया। आज बहुत से इकोनॉमिस्ट और हिस्टोरियन ये मानते हैं कि ये एक बहुत बड़ा रीजन था इस आर्थिक महामंदी को और ज्यादा बढ़ाने का। उनका कहना है कि अगर ये एक्ट पास न होता तो इस महामंदी का इंपैक्ट इतना ज्यादा सिवियर न होता। इस एक्ट के अंदर इंपोर्ट टैरिफ इतना ज्यादा हाई था कि पिछले 100 सालों में इतने हाई टैरिफ सिर्फ एक बार 1828 में ही हुए थे। इतने ज्यादा टैरिफ होने की वजह से टैरिफ वॉर शुरू हो गया था और कंट्रीज के बीच जो इंपोर्ट एक्सपोर्ट था वो और ज्यादा कम हो गया। हम ये कह सकते हैं कि इस टैरिफ वॉर की वजह से ही कुछ ऐसी इकोनॉमिक रीजंस बने जो आगे चलकर कहीं ना कहीं सेकेंड वर्ल्ड वॉर को चिंगारी देने का काम करते हैं। इसके बाद सेकेंड वर्ल्ड वॉर में हुए आर्थिक नुकसान ने वर्ल्ड इकोनॉमी की हालत और ज्यादा खराब कर दी। उस समय मेजर वर्ल्ड पावर्स को एक ऐसे संगठन को बनाने की जरूरत महसूस हुई जो वर्ल्ड इकोनॉमी को कंट्रोल कर सके। इसके लिए 1944 में यूएस ने सबसे पहले आगे आकर एक कदम उठाया और एक कॉन्फ्रेंस का आयोजन किया। इस कॉन्फ्रेंस को यूएस के न्यू हैम्पशायर स्टेट के ब्रेटन वुड्स शहर में रखा गया, जिसे ब्रेटन वुड्स सिस्टम या ब्रेटन वुड्स कॉन्फ्रेंस कहा गया। इसके अलावा फॉर्मली इसे द यूनाइटेड नेशंस मॉनेटरी एंड फाइनेंशियल कॉन्फ्रेंस नाम दिया गया था। बता दें कि यह कॉन्फ्रेंस 1 से 22 जुलाई 1944 तक चली थी। इस कॉन्फ्रेंस में इस बात पर चर्चा की गई कि महामंदी के बाद जो हालात बद से बदतर हुए हैं वैसा कुछ दोबारा न हो। इससे बचने के लिए एक फाइनेंशियल ऑर्डर होना चाहिए जो ऐसी सिचुएशन से बचाने के लिए सबको गाइड करे, जिससे आगे चलकर किसी तरह की कोई मिसअंडरस्टैंडिंग न हो। नेशंस एक दूसरे के इंटरेस्ट के खिलाफ काम न शुरू कर दें, जिससे वॉर टाइप सिचुएशन फिर से न बन जाए। आइए जानते हैं इस दौरान किन किन एग्रीमेंट्स पर साइन किया गया। ब्रेटन वुड्स कॉन्फ्रेंस एग्रीमेंट। ब्रेटन वुड्स कॉन्फ्रेंस में दुनिया के 44 नेशंस के डेलीगेट्स पार्टिसिपेट करते हैं। इसका एम पोस्ट वर्ल्ड वॉर II इंटरनेशनल मॉनेटरी सिस्टम के लिए नए रूल्स पर अग्री होना था। इस दौरान बहुत से एग्रीमेंट्स पर साइन किए गए थे। इस कॉन्फ्रेंस में ही मुख्य व्यापार आवाजाही और टैक्स फ्री प्रीपेड एग्रीमेंट की बात हुई, ताकि ट्रेड के आसान रूल्स को बनाया जा सके और विश्व की आर्थिक मंदी को दूर किया जा सके। आसान भाषा में अगर ब्रेटन वुड्स सिस्टम की बात करें तो ये अर्थव्यवस्था उदारीकरण की, मुक्त व्यापार और निजीकरण की बात करता है। इसके साथ ही इसके तहत 30 संस्थाओं का गठन किया गया। लेकिन इस कॉन्फ्रेंस में जो मेन ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस प्रपोज की गईं वो हैं इंटरनेशनल बैंक फॉर रिकंस्ट्रक्शन एंड डेवलपमेंट IBRD, इंटरनेशनल मॉनेटरी फंड यानी IMF और इंटरनेशनल ट्रेड ऑर्गेनाइजेशन यानी ITO। इनमें से IBRD और IMF तो दिसंबर 1945 तक सक्सेसफुली एस्टैब्लिश हो गए, लेकिन कुछ कारणों से ITO फेल होता नजर आने लगा था। आइए जानते हैं ऐसा क्यों हुआ। Why did the ITO fail? दोस्तों, ITO का कॉन्सेप्ट वर्ल्ड ट्रेड को रेगुलेट करने के पर्पस से लाया गया था। यह आइडिया तो बहुत अच्छा था, पर बहुत से देशों ने इसमें पॉजिटिव इंटरेस्ट भी दिखाया, लेकिन इसके प्रैक्टिकल इंप्लीमेंटेशन पर सहमति नहीं बन पा रही थी। इसके लिए साल 1948 में हवाना में यूनाइटेड नेशंस कॉन्फ्रेंस ऑन ट्रेड एंड एम्प्लॉयमेंट ने ITO के लिए एक ड्राफ्ट चार्टर तैयार किया, जिसे हवाना चार्टर के नाम से जाना जाता है। इस चार्टर के तहत ट्रेड, इन्वेस्टमेंट, सर्विसेज और एम्प्लॉयमेंट जैसे मुद्दों को रेगुलेट करने के लिए कुछ रूल्स बनाए गए। ये रूल्स वर्ल्ड ट्रेड को और ज्यादा ईज करने और प्रोटेक्शनिज्म जैसी पॉलिसीज को कंट्रोल करने की दृष्टि से बनाए गए थे। लेकिन इस चार्टर को इफेक्टिव होने के लिए उस पर 56 नेशंस के साइन चाहिए थे। हालांकि साइन सिर्फ 53 नेशंस ने ही किए। समस्या सिर्फ इतनी ही नहीं थी कि सिर्फ 53 कंट्रीज ने ही साइन किए और 3 और साइंस बाकी थे, बल्कि इससे भी बड़ी समस्या ये थी कि साइन न करने वाले देशों में USA भी शामिल था। जी हां दोस्तों, USA को ITO का आइडिया पसंद नहीं आया और US कांग्रेस ने इसे रिजेक्ट कर दिया। अब USA जैसे इकोनॉमिक सुपर पावर के मना करने के बाद बाकी देश भी असमंजस की स्थिति में थे कि ITO को आगे कैसे लेकर जाया जाए। बिना USA के पार्टिसिपेशन के तो इसका सफल होना मुमकिन नहीं लग रहा था। लेकिन ये भी सब जानते थे कि ट्रेड को रेगुलेट करने के लिए एक ऑर्गेनाइजेशन की जरूरत तो है। तो चलिए आगे बताते हैं कि USA के मना करने के बाद बाकी रिमेनिंग नेशंस ने क्या फैसला लिया। फॉर्मेशन ऑफ GATT। USA ने ITO के आइडिया को कंप्लीटली डिक्लाइन करने में बहुत वक्त लगाया। वो डिसाइड ही नहीं कर पा रहा था कि इसके लिए कब ऑफिशियली मना करें। इधर बाकी बचे देश ज्यादा वेट नहीं कर पा रहे थे, क्योंकि उनको एक ऐसे एग्रीमेंट की जरूरत थी जो वर्ल्ड ट्रेड को इजीली रेगुलेट कर पाए। USA की आनाकानी की वजह से ITO का प्रोसेस तो आगे नहीं बढ़ पा रहा था, लेकिन कुछ तो करना ही था। ऐसे में ग्लोबल कम्युनिटी ने इसका टेम्पररी सोल्यूशन निकाला और एक टेम्पररी मल्टीलैटरल एग्रीमेंट को तैयार किया, ताकि वर्ल्ड ट्रेड कुछ तो आगे डेवलप हो और उसके लिए कुछ रूल्स सेट किए जा सके। इसके लिए 30 अक्टूबर 1947 को जिनीवा में एक कॉन्फ्रेंस हुई। इस कॉन्फ्रेंस में ही टेम्पररी मल्टीलैटरल एग्रीमेंट को तैयार किया गया और इसको नाम दिया गया GATT यानी जनरल एग्रीमेंट ऑन टैरिफ्स एंड ट्रेड। इसके पक्ष में 23 कंट्रीज ने साइन किए। सभी फॉर्मेलिटीज के बाद 1 जनवरी 1948 को GATT इफेक्टिवली अस्तित्व में आया। इसके मेन मोटिव में इंपोर्ट कोटा के यूज को खत्म करना और कमर्शियल गुड्स पर ट्रेड ड्यूटी को रिड्यूस करना था। इसके साथ ही GATT केवल मर्चेंडाइज्ड गुड्स पर ही एप्लीकेबल था और ये एक ऑर्गेनाइजेशन नहीं था, बल्कि सिर्फ एक एग्रीमेंट था। इसलिए इसमें साइन करने वाली कंट्रीज को पार्टिसिपेटिंग कंट्रीज न कहकर कॉन्ट्रैक्टिंग पार्टीज कहा गया। इसके अलावा GATT के बहुत से प्रोटोकॉल थे, जैसे प्रोविजनल एप्लीकेशन, जिसको ग्रैंडफादर्स राइट्स भी कहा जाता था। इसे आप ऐसे समझ सकते हैं कि मान लीजिए भारत एक देश है जो GATT की एक कॉन्ट्रैक्टिंग पार्टी है और भारत के कुछ डोमेस्टिक लॉज हैं जो GATT के लॉज से मैच नहीं होते हैं, तो भारत GATT की वही लॉज फॉलो करेगा जिससे उसको नुकसान ना हो, यानी ऐसे लॉज जो उसके डोमेस्टिक लॉज के साथ कंपैटिबल हों। इसी प्रोटोकॉल की वजह से गैट को बहुत फ्लेक्सिबल माना गया। इसी बीच साल 1950 में यूएसए ने आईटीओ पर अपना आखिरी फैसला ले लिया था। जब यूएसए द्वारा आईटीओ के आइडिया को साफ तौर पर इनकार कर दिया गया, तब सभी नेशंस ने तय किया कि गैट को ही आगे भी फॉलो किया जाएगा। चलिए आगे बढ़ते हैं और जानते हैं कि कैसे गैट से डब्ल्यूटीओ बना। कन्वर्जन ऑफ गैट इनटू डब्ल्यूटीओ। गैट का मेन मोटिव वर्ल्ड ट्रेड को प्रमोट करना था, लेकिन यह भी कुछ रीजंस की वजह से ज्यादा सक्सेसफुल नहीं हो पाई, जिसके बाद 1986 में यूरुग्वे में एक कॉन्फ्रेंस होती है जहां पर गैट को रिप्लेस करने की बात की जाती है। बहुत सी निगोशिएशंस के बाद 15 अप्रैल 1994 को मैराकेश ट्रीटी होती है और 1 जनवरी 1995 को इसी मैराकेश ट्रीटी के तहत ही वर्ल्ड ट्रेड ऑर्गेनाइजेशन यानी डब्ल्यूटीओ को ऑफिशियली फॉर्म किया जाता है। इसका हेडक्वार्टर्स जिनीवा, स्विट्जरलैंड में बनाया जाता है और इसका फंडामेंटल पर्पस है टू रेगुलेट इंटरनेशनल ट्रेड। दोस्तों, अभी भी आपके मन में एक सवाल उठ रहा होगा कि गैट को रिप्लेस करने की जरूरत क्यों आई और डब्ल्यूटीओ को क्यों बनाया गया। डब्ल्यूटीओ को क्रिएट करने के पीछे बहुत से रीजंस थे। इसमें मेन तो यह था कि गैट सिर्फ रूल्स और मल्टीलैटरल अग्रीमेंट्स का कलेक्शन था। उसमें इंस्टीट्यूशनल फ्रेमवर्क की कमी थी। उसके पास कोई फंक्शनल बॉडी नहीं थी जो इसके काम को रेगुलेट करे। वहीं डब्ल्यूटीओ को एक परमानेंट फुल फ्लेज्ड इंटरनेशनल इंस्टीट्यूशन की तरह बनाया गया, जिसके पास अपना इंडिपेंडेंट सेक्रेटेरिएट है। इसके साथ ही गैट बहुत ब्यूरोक्रेटिक स्ट्रक्चर वाला था। लाल फीताशाही वहां ज्यादा थी। वहीं अगर हम डब्ल्यूटीओ को देखें तो डब्ल्यूटीओ इंटरनेशनल इंप्लीमेंटेशन में बहुत ज्यादा फास्ट है। इसके साथ ही डब्ल्यूटीओ के पास मेंबर कंट्रीज के डिस्प्यूट्स रिजॉल्व करने की ज्यादा अथॉरिटी है, जबकि गैट के पास ऐसी कोई अथॉरिटी नहीं थी। दोस्तों, गैट सिर्फ मर्चेंडाइज्ड गुड्स की ट्रेडिंग रेगुलेट करने के लिए था, लेकिन डब्ल्यूटीओ बहुत सारी ट्रेडिंग एक्टिविटीज को कवर करता रहा है। वो मर्चेंडाइज्ड गुड्स के साथ इंटेलेक्चुअल प्रॉपर्टी की ट्रेडिंग को भी रेगुलेट करता है।
घर की याद तो आती है।
जहां गैट को एक वीक डिस्प्यूट सेटलमेंट मैकेनिज्म के तहत टेम्पररी तौर पर बनाया गया था, वहीं डब्ल्यूटीओ को एक बेहतर स्ट्रैटेजी के साथ बनाया गया था। गैट की एक बहुत बड़ी प्रॉब्लम यह थी कि गैट के जो अग्रीमेंट्स थे उन पर इंप्लीमेंट करना मेंबर कंट्रीज की मर्जी होती थी, जिसकी वजह से बहुत सी कंट्रीज अपने कुछ लोकल रीजंस की वजह से भी कंडीशन को नहीं मानते थे और उसके लिए उन्हें किसी भी तरह अकाउंटेबल नहीं किया जा सकता था। लेकिन डब्ल्यूटीओ में ऐसा नहीं है। डब्ल्यूटीओ में जो कमिटमेंट्स हैं वो परमानेंट और रिलायबल ही रहेंगी। इन सब के अलावा एक बहुत बड़ा फैक्टर यह भी था कि जो डेवलपिंग कंट्रीज थी उन्होंने ये डिमांड की थी कि ट्रेड इन एग्रीकल्चर एंड टेक्सटाइल को भी इंटरनेशनल ट्रेड में शामिल किया जाए। दोस्तों, ये गैट में नहीं था। ये भी एक वजह रही डब्ल्यूटीओ को फॉर्म करने की। आइए ब्रीफ में डब्ल्यूटीओ के मेजर फंक्शंस को देख लेते हैं। मेजर फंक्शंस ऑफ द वर्ल्ड ट्रेड ऑर्गेनाइजेशन। अगर हम वर्ल्ड ट्रेड ऑर्गेनाइजेशन के इंपॉर्टेंट फंक्शंस की बात करें तो ये इंटरनेशनल ट्रेड को इन्हांस करने का काम करता है। साथ ही ये इंटरनेशनल ट्रेड के लिए रूल्स बनाता है और मेंबर नेशन से उन्हें इंप्लीमेंट भी करवाता है, और इंटरनेशनल ट्रेड के लिए मेंबर कंट्रीज को एक प्लेटफॉर्म प्रोवाइड करता है। इसके अलावा इंटरनेशनल ट्रेड से रिलेटेड डिस्प्यूट्स को रिजॉल्व करना भी इसका एक अहम फंक्शन है, और मेंबर कंट्रीज के बीच अग्रीमेंट्स करवाना भी इसी का काम है। इसका काम ग्लोबल इकोनॉमिक पॉलिसी को बनाने में इंटरनेशनल मॉनेटरी फंड यानी IMF और वर्ल्ड बैंक से कोलैबोरेट करना भी है। वर्ल्ड रिसोर्सेज को सही से और इक्वली यूज करना ही डब्ल्यूटीओ का मेन टारगेट है। कंक्लूजन। तो दोस्तों, इस तरह सेकेंड वर्ल्ड वॉर के बाद ट्रेड को रेगुलेट करने की जरूरत महसूस होने पर एक ऑर्गेनाइजेशन की कल्पना की गई, जो कुछ सालों बाद डब्ल्यूटीओ के रूप में बनकर तैयार हुआ। अपनी फॉर्मेशन से लेकर अब तक डब्ल्यूटीओ ने इंटरनेशनल ट्रेड को ईज करने और उसे प्रमोट करने के लिए बहुत से रूल्स और रेगुलेशंस बनाए हैं। सबसे बड़ी बात यह है कि इसमें डेवलपिंग कंट्रीज की आवाज को शुरू से ही सुना गया है। यह अलग बात है कि कुछ मुद्दों पर अभी भी डेवलप्ड नेशंस और डेवलपिंग कंट्रीज के बीच सहमति नहीं बन पाई है, लेकिन हम उम्मीद करते हैं कि आने वाले समय में डब्ल्यूटीओ अपने काम में और ज्यादा सफल हो और इंटरनेशनल ट्रेड और ग्लोबल इकोनॉमी को स्टेबिलिटी और ग्रोथ के रास्ते पर आगे लेकर जाने में सहायक हो। डब्ल्यूटीओ के रोल के बारे में आपकी क्या राय है? हमारे साथ कमेंट सेक्शन में
Okay, I think now I am sharing the PPT. So I think you have understood what is WTO, what is its history. So this is also there, major provision of WTO under education. So this was the origin of WTO and World Trade. This is World Trade Organization, and various sectors of General Agreement of Trade Service (GATS) is under consideration for the World Trade Organization, and it would take the center stage for discussion during the next round of meeting. The nations like India, which are signatories to the WTO, have to prepare themselves for the discussion on various sectors, including education. The WTO says services, including education, must be least trade restrictive. That means member nations must be prepared to accept market mechanism for the sector. Then this is about the World Trade Organization. It is an intergovernmental organization that regulate intertrade. And January 1995, this replacing General Agreement and GATS, which had been in effect from 1948. And WTO's creation is considered the biggest reform to international trade since the end of World War II. And it says that services must be least restrictive. And then, age of now, GATS rule will apply to services like education in the following ways. Under GATS rule, government cannot give better treatment to local companies than to foreign companies, and this is known as national treatment. That means once a service provider from a member country enters another country under specific commitment, it cannot be discriminated from other service provider in the country. The governments cannot limit the access of companies by limiting their number or requiring them to have local content or train local people. There can be no limits on foreign investment and no requirement on foreign investor to contribute to local development. And Indian policies could be challenged on the following aspect, like your government funding. ସେଠି ସେ ଆଉ ଗୋଟେ କଥା ଆପଣଙ୍କୁ କହିଲେ ଯେ ଗଟ୍ସରେ ଯୋଉ ଥିଲା ଯେ ଇଣ୍ଡିଆ ତା ସହିତ ଯଦି କରୁଛି ଏଗ୍ରିମେଣ୍ଟ ତାହେଲେ ଯୋଉଟା ଆମର ଇଣ୍ଡିଆନ୍ ପଲିସିଜ ସହିତ ଏଟ୍ ପାର୍ ସେ ସେଟାକୁ ରିସିଭ୍ କରିବ। ଗଟ୍ସର କିଛିଟା ପାର୍ଟ ଏବେ ବି ଅଛି। ତେଣୁ ଗଭର୍ଣ୍ଣମେଣ୍ଟ ଫଣ୍ଡିଂ ଅଫ୍ ପବ୍ଲିକ ସର୍ଭିସ୍ ଲାଇକ୍ ହେଲ୍ଥ ଏଜୁକେସନ୍ କୁଡ୍ ବି ଚ୍ୟାଲେଞ୍ଜଡ୍ ବାଇ ଫରେନ୍ କୋଅପରେସନ୍ ଆର୍ଗୁଇଂ ଫର୍ access to funding through competitive tendering, limits for foreign investment in industries like media, telecommunication, etc., when requirement for Indian content in media which promote Indian culture and jobs, requirement that foreign investor train local people and use local products. Then secondly, that each member country will have to make a request of her for a particular service to be part of the agreement, and that is to say it is voluntary in nature. It means the country can decide which service sector they would like to cover under GATS rule. Thirdly, member maintaining practices restrain competition is directed to enter into consultation with view to eliminate them and then requested by another member. Then fourthly, members who have to ensure that all measures are administered in reasonable and impartial manner, establish judicial or administrative institution for review to ensure it and not introduce any regulation that affect operation of or any arrangement. Then we will see WTO has identified four main modes of trade: cross-border supply, consumption abroad, commercial presence, and presence of natural persons. So first, cross-border supply of a service that include any type of course provided through distance education, internet, and any type of testing service or educational materials that can cross national boundaries. Then consumption abroad means mode 2 mainly involves the education of foreign students. Commercial presence refers to the actual presence of foreign investor in a host country. Presence of natural person refers to ability of people to move between countries to provide educational services. Then education services are identified as of now five main categories: primary education, secondary education, higher education, adult education, and other educational area that will be covered under WTO. Then emerging forms of education. So these are the transnational education, online education. Online education रे भी हमें all over the world करिपारछु. Distance and education, online, collaborative education. So these are the different forms of education now. These are the emerging forms of education. Then what is transnational education? That is TNE. It's education delivered in a country other than the country in which awarding institution is based. Example, student based in country X Y studying for a degree from a university in the country Z. जोटा NEPA में कहले हमर जो फॉरेन यूनिवर्सिटी मानकर जो पढ़िबार अपॉर्चुनिटी हमको मिल पारिबो से सब कथा होची ट्रांसनेशनल एजुकेशन भितर आसीबो द एजुकेशनल discourses between the educational provider and students are carried out through multiple means, namely mail, computer network, teleconferencing, radio or television network, etc. So these franchises, twinning कथा जो NEP रे कहैछि, corporate university, distance education, franchises नहीं करी होबो, branch campus, everything will be coming under transnational education. Then online education, virtual university କରିବାର question notice ଅଛି NEP ପରେ ପରେ. The basic concept of virtual university is that there is no physical manifestation of the university or any educational institution. Students and teachers are in distant location. Both of them are connected to each other for their educational discourse. For that, educational technology has already been developed, and internet or online connectivity you can read. So the most staff that develop program may not be those who support them, and those who assess them may be different again without a campus or institution be dubbed, that is virtual university. Then distance education or online education, you know better. Then collaborative education, the efforts have been made by some organization to offer courses that have been created by other institutions. Two models of such collaborative education in USA are Western Governor University and Southern Regional Education Board's Electronic Campus. Someone is developing the course, someone is imparting the course. Then WGO is a virtual institution that offers course created by 40 colleges and university, started in 1998, and it offers a competency-based testing system to its degrees in competition with existing colleges. So this is about your World Trade Organization and higher education. This is doing for higher education, and means at last we can say that the demand for education, especially from the less developed countries where we have most people living, has attracted the attention of various agencies who wish to see education as a tradable commodity rather than as a resource for development of all. International agencies also wish to elite the classes who have the capacity to pay in international rates. And the WTO proposal on education is likely to bombard education with online technologies and virtual classrooms on the less developed countries by the business house and institution, and unable to attract enough students and collect sufficient funds from home countries and affluent nations. So this is the function of the WTO. Okay. So this is then the open and distance learning we will discuss in the next class. Okay, Sasmita, do you want to ask something?